Welcome to the Chorus Daily Briefing. Happy Monday, everybody. Today, I'm here and joined by the CEO of Score More Sales, the founder and president of Women Sales Pros, Lori Richardson. Good morning, Lori. How are you?
Hi, Jim. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Really appreciate you kicking off the week with us. And how, I know you're out near Boston. How are you holding up?
Yeah, we're doing okay. You know, we're hunkered down and avoiding as much contact as possible still, but it's getting harder and harder by the week, I think. I'm very much a social person, so it's difficult.
I know out here in the West, it feels like people, well, at least what I'm seeing, people are ready to get back out there. There's just maybe there's a fatigue, maybe there's an energy with spring and summer in the air. What are you hearing? What are you sensing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same thing. I think things are easing up here in our state in New Hampshire this week, and it's gradually going to loosen up. So I think that'll be good for people. We can get outside, and we had pretty poor weather the month of April, so it was beautiful this weekend, and I think that gave everybody kind of an itch to get out.
Yeah, I think we're all ready. I know we got to stay safe. It's a balancing act right now.
Correct.
Lori, we've got all of us working in different environments, and you mentioned you've been working at home for many years. So you have more experience here. This is new for me. I'm used to being in the office. I've got 3 kids and my wife around, and many of us are trying to balance right now this work and personal life and kids and family. What advice do you have for folks out there? What are you seeing? What are you hearing right now from those that are working through this period?
Yeah, it can be a real challenge depending on your situation. If you're young and you have roommates, you can figure that out. If you're a family and you have kids, I mean, that's a whole nother ball game. And when I was coming up in sales in my early 20s, I was a single parent, and I can't even imagine how that would go. And so for any of the single parents, male or female, that are listening in, and parents in general, because just being a parent, it's a challenge depending on the age of your kids and those little ones, and as I guess every age, it just gets different. It doesn't get better. It just gets different, but it can be tough.
It can't be tough. It can be unpredictable right now. And I'm curious, what are you seeing companies do to support, those that are home, those that may be juggling different responsibilities right now and can't have that separation that we would normally have in the office?
Yeah, so I've been aligned with sales teams, my entire career. And for sales teams, I think the best idea, and this is what we do with our clients, is to over communicate and to better understand each rep's situation and really let them know, even it might be once a day, it might be twice a day, but really be involved in what they're working on. And I don't mean micromanaging, but for them to know that, what you do today matters, and we want to help you in any way that we can. And so I think over communicating and focusing on some goals every day is super important. It's important for me working by myself that I set goals, because it's so easy to get off track.
Well, speaking of goals and numbers, I know you've done some recent research about the huddles, but I wanted to pull up a quick piece of our most recent data, and that is looking at overall meeting volume, week after week. And we've been encouraged the last few weeks that it started to recover. And then this last week, the most recent data is it dropped 8%. So I was a bit surprised when we saw this. I think there's an energy to get back out there, but we're also talking about a bit of a fatigue that we're seeing. I saw Sam Altman do a post that resonated with me on Friday night. Are you finding yourself working differently right now, even though you've had work from home, but are you on more Zooms? Are you on more interactions that are changing the way you've worked previous to this?
I've never been on so many Zoom calls in my life. I have that FOMO, the fear of missing out just from missing one Zoom event over another Zoom event. And so it's crazy. It can be definitely crazy. I think you have to focus on what's urgent versus important,
Yeah.
really focus on those important items. And if I'm a rep, it ties into what's going to help me grow revenue. At the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror and think, did I do things that are leading to more revenue for my quota and for my company?
What are some of the programs maybe you've seen out there of how leaders are motivating their sales teams right now and are keeping them inspired during this period?
Oh, I've seen some fun contests that are going on. Gamification's always an idea. Doesn't always work for everybody. I I like having my leader in front of me at least once a day. I mean, I think that that's critical, and for some sales teams, morning and end of day, and just evaluating what are you excited about today, not just
Yep.
did you hit your numbers, but what's exciting, what are you looking forward to. And those are the kinds of things. We can't close a deal every day necessarily, most people don't, depending on whether you have complex sales. So you need something to get you excited. And it's not just about the connects, it's really about the conversations, as of course you guys know.
Definitely. Have you seen this pattern where the meeting data has been fairly consistent, a little up and down in the last few weeks, but it's actually held steady since pre-COVID? Does this match what you're seeing out in the marketplace?
Yeah, I'm not surprised at that. I've told people that if I was a rep during this time and I finally got the opportunity to work from home and I liked it,
Yep.
I'd be documenting everything, and I would be working to make my volume up 8%. So I find it interesting, but it's not all that surprising knowing what people are juggling. And our company's adding more meetings in. I don't know.
I mean, that's the balancing act. One of the areas that you've been recognized with Lifetime Achievement Awards, but around coaching. And I'm curious, as people are working from home, what advice you have for leaders. You've mentioned the huddles, the beginning and the end of the day. Any other coaching tactics that you think could be deployed right now?
Well, I do think when we were talking about parenting, and I mean this very seriously because I've worked so hard for more women in sales and sales leadership. And since we know that women tend to be the primary caregiver in most households, since we know that even without kids, women are caregiving. I have a colleague who's about my age, but she has a mom who's in assisted living, and she's, stressing out about that every day. And I feel like we may lose some of the women on our sales teams, because if I have the same quota and I'm not reaching as many people and my meetings are down 8%, I'm going to be stressed out about that. And maybe I'm going to think about getting a different kind of a job where I don't have as much quota to hit. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see that. I'm hopeful that that's not the case. But when it comes to coaching, I would work individually with every person, and I would work extra with them, and I would get on calls with them if I could, and I would do whatever it took as a leader to let them know that I cared about them and that their contribution is important and that they're a unique person. They're not just one of many on the team.
Love it. I think it's terrific advice for everybody out there. I wanted to go a little deeper, and given your work in the field, we looked at the productivity metrics across genders,
Yeah.
and wanted to get your thoughts. This is the data that we're seeing across the marketplace, and your observations, your thoughts on what might be driving the differences between the different genders.
Well, there's a lot we don't know probably with this research. I think that this is showing that the gap is closer now. So that's, I guess that's a good thing. I've always tried to say that it doesn't matter to me who does better, men or women. Let's just say they do the same. And if that's the case, we have a proportionately lower amount of women in every role in sales. And it's, it's the second worst in a company from a gender parity standpoint. So I love to see anything that's, equal, but I know that people are, often will see these things where it's different between men and women. I also think it matters how many industries we're looking at. And I know this is probably skewed more toward tech, SaaS, fintech, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I also work with manufacturing clients, distribution, and I love seeing a wide variety of industries represented. But I think that, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we're looking at, millions and millions of calls here. And this is just giving a quick sense of looking at productivity. So
Yeah.
men and women, how we're seeing differences across different genders, and then looking at the length of meetings and how we're seeing it impacted. It's an interesting observation of jumping in. I know that there's different styles out there.
Yeah. And some, some research I've seen around risk, when I'm thinking about the length of time that a woman is on a call compared to a man. I think sometimes and I'm trying to, I'd like to have more conclusive evidence of this, so I'll be careful how I say it. But I do think that sometimes women will weigh the risk in advance, and they figure if it's a longer shot than they want, they may give up sooner. I don't know. That's one of my theories. I don't think it has to do with, being less competitive or anything like that. But I think women just process information a little bit differently than men do.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad that we could share this and at least have just different insights on how we look at the data. One of the other key areas from a coaching standpoint is that we're continuing to see a significant increase in leaders joining the sales meetings. We've shared this for many weeks, but only last week did we see a small dip. It dropped 3%, week over week. But this has been interesting. I mean, on the sales side, sales leaders are being pulled into a lot more calls than they were before. Does this match what you're seeing out in the marketplace?
Yeah, because they're more available, right? On both sides. So the sellers leaders are available, the buyers leaders are more available, and if you can move something forward quicker, that's awesome. I'm all for that.
What advice would you give to a sales professional that has their leaders joining these calls? How should the sales professional run this call in this new environment, knowing that they have more support from directors and executives?
Yeah, I like how you said, how should they run the call? Because they should run the call and they should not defer to their leader. I would want the leader and the rep to talk in advance about who's gonna do what, pretty much, and how far things would go. And I would not want a leader that would end up doing more than they should. A leader should be there to offer support and help in certain areas, but not necessarily rescue the rep. If they rescue reps, then they're never going to teach the reps how to do it themselves, and they may lose an opportunity that way. So that's always something that's an interesting conversation in a company.
Sales has become such a science. There's so many steps today. As leaders are getting pulled closer into the field, do you find that they need additional coaching and training right now as they're deeper in it than ever?
For sure, because we know some of the research that I've seen over the years that working from home is not for everybody. Not everyone does it well. And so leaders have to really understand how to best motivate and inspire their reps.
One of the interesting stats here as well is that on the buyer side, really significant increase in buyer directors and executives joining calls. And, it was even up, 2% week over week. So this suggests that there's either some friction in the sales process, it's requiring, senior execs to come together and work through challenges and prioritization. Are you seeing this from the customers you're working with?
Yeah, and again, I've only thought of it really as availability. And if if I can get other people in the buying decision together on a call, why wouldn't I? But I don't know if there are other reasons. I wonder if how the closing ratio has changed. That would be interesting to know if people are closing deals now.
It's interesting. The availability makes a lot of sense, especially if we saw an increase in Monday meetings. People aren't traveling as much.
Yeah.
One of the guests I had did talk about just the friction in the system right now. And I thought that was an interesting observation of just there's more friction, there's less alignment, therefore more people involved. In terms of knowing that you have the buyer executives on, what changes should we be working with our sales professionals to better arm them, to better train them for these discussions?
People need to be understanding of the buyer's situation as much as they can, as much as you can know ahead of time, and as much as you can know your buyer's scenarios, because we're seeing discussions now about implementations that are going to happen a little bit down the road. Mm-hmm. Some are happening now. I mean, I've seen people closing a number of different deals, which is really great, but there are also a lot of people who are positioning for the future, and having more leadership involved, I think is a good thing. Even if there is friction, let's get as many people on the call as we can. That's what I would want to see.
Are there any other key surprises, things that in this last 6 to 8 weeks that have surprised you about the way people work, the way they've come together?
It's amazing. I know of companies that swore that they would never let their reps work from home, and not just reps, all different departments. There were companies that just had no interest in that ever happening, even partially. And I'm really looking forward to seeing now, once people start going back to work, how many do and how many don't want to, and how that's going to change. And if I can accomplish more sitting at my home office, and I can get more meetings for you, and I can close more deals, is that going to be okay? And I think people will now start to think about who they're working for and mm-hmm. what the company goals are. And if you're happy with me doing that from here, and I can increase my revenue and goals, that'll be a good matchup. But there will be other people that don't match up so well. So it should be really, really interesting.
You had a great blog post on this. I was reading just before jumping on about just the changes, the way people work. And I think you're spot on. I think it'll be very interesting to see, especially in the high density office environments that many of us have assembled, especially out in the Bay Area where, real estate is quite expensive. I think it is going to change the way we think about, how we work and what's required to achieve these brilliant customer experiences.
Yeah, I already saw Node, the AI company. I saw that they sold all their furniture, or they're selling it. And they're done with their office for now.
Yep, them and Elon Musk, I think, are selling everything. Is what I'm reading. One last question on the enterprise side and getting out in the field. Clearly, the world is going to one day resume and reopen, and we will look back upon this time. What impacts are you expecting to see on the enterprise side and the field side?
I think we'll see more of a blended approach, because you don't have to go on site for everything. And having worked in the field in past years, it's almost like a lifestyle. And I think it's been the hardest for people who are used to being on the road, maybe not so managed. And now that they're somewhere where they need to be a little more accountable. I mean, I think accountability is really important, and we need to factor that in terms of you may have a different makeup of people. I think some will survive with more of a blended approach, and others who want to be mysterious and just kind of stay out in the field and get things done, may not do it. They may not fare as well. What do you think?
I think that once people start to get back on the road, which still might be a ways off, it'll put pressure on others to get back on the road. And so when everybody's doing it remote, it's fair, it works. Yeah. And I think that enterprise teams are having to become inside The motion is inside, but the technology is remote. But I think the sales motion is still very much enterprise class. The way in which the enterprise sells will never change. It just is the technology they're using. But I do think that once the world reopens, I think we're all excited to recharge and to have experiences together. So I think there'll be less conference rooms with PowerPoint on the wall and more about meeting your customers at events and concerts and just things that bring people together to build trust and relationships. That's what I'm hoping and looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a really good novel that we don't know how it's going to end, right? Or continue.
We don't know. I'm sure it'll turn out well, but it's just a matter of when. Well, great. Well, hey, Lori, thank you for kicking off this week with us. Really nice to spend some time with you today. I appreciate you sharing your insights.
Oh, my pleasure, Jim. Thanks a lot.
You got it. Okay, cheers.
Bye.